daylight outside till about 8 o'clock here, and we've had some wonderful weather. But I don't know what the British would talk about if they didn't talk about um, the weather all the time. I don't know where John is. I saw him on Thursday. We were down in Gloucester together. He's in good form, but he didn't say he wasn't coming, so he'll probably turn up late at some point. But we'll get along to do all the other things. So I'm just going to go around, and if we all get a good, there's not that many of us, so take a chance to have a good story. If you want it to be a little bit longer, do a little. I'm going to do a Jack story, and I don't know if you know Jack stories from where your parts are and everything else, but this is a Jack story that I've been thinking about personal stories and the way that it's going. So this is something I've been putting together. Anyway, so Walid, we're going to go with you first, and after then it's going to be Eleanor. So Walid, who sat in the Storytelling Cafe in Morocco, in Marrakesh, and I can close my eyes, I can almost touch where he's sat now. Okay, Walid. And you're muted.
Yes.
There we go.
So welcome everyone. So the today's stories is about Moroccan tea. So and the title for this story, it's called The Magic of Moroccan Tea. So in quiet village near to the Sahara, there lived a young boy. His name is Yusuf. His grandfather, Sil Mukhtar, was known for making the best Moroccan tea and call it the Shay bin Nana or Atay bin Nana in Moroccan language. So people said his tea called calm storms and heal hurts. So one day, Yusuf asked his grandfather, and he said, "Why is your tea is so special, special?" Sil Mukhtar smiled and he said, "Because I learned the secret from the desert wind." So the night under the stars, he showed Yusuf how to make it. First, he poured the water with the green tea, then he adds some fresh mint and mountain of sugar and poured it high to wake the spirit of the tea. And he said, "But grandfather, what is the magic from this tea?" His grandfather poured the glass, handed to him, and he said, "The magic is not the tea, it's in the time we share." From the day Yus made the tea for everyone in the village, and somehow, with every glass, people smiled a little more, laughed a little louder, and felt a little closer, and saw the magic of Moroccan tea. That's it.
That was absolutely lovely. I must say that the best Moroccan tea I've ever had. Now, I've been to the hotels and I've been around the souk and in the shops and everything else. But it was 4 o'clock in the morning in the square when we were doing the Guinness Book of Records. And the lads who were working there, they came, they said, "Do you want a cup of tea, Mike?" And they made me a cup of tea on an old battered teapot with an old bit of gas ring and everything else. And it was the nicest one I've ever had, particularly at 4 o'clock in the morning. Right, so we're going to go to Eleanor. And from Eleanor, we're going to go to Julian. Okay, so Eleanor from Canada. Are you in Nova Scotia, I believe?
I am, yeah. That was pretty close as far as Canada goes. Marrakesh is closer to me than Vancouver. So that's our country.
I don't know. Okay. I think I'd hate to live in Vancouver because everybody always says, "Oh, nobody lives in Vancouver. Vancouver's such a long, long way away that nobody ever knows." So somebody must like the place.
Oh yeah, we've been there a few times, and our conference is going to be out that way next year. It's going to be here in Halifax in June. Anyway, stop talking and tell your story, Eleanor. Okay, this story our local group is doing a fundraiser for the Stephen Lewis Foundation partnership with Grandmothers to Grandmothers, which is a lovely group that does fundraisers to raise money to send to grandmothers, mostly in Kenya and Uganda, who are raising their grandchildren because the parents of the grandchildren have died of AIDS. So we were doing that for a long time before the lockdown, and this is the first one we're now actually going to do after the lockdown. So we're kind of excited about it, and this is the story, one of the stories I picked to tell that day. It comes from Alexander McCall Smith, the girl who married a lion. You might know Alexander McCall Smith as the author of the #1 Ladies Detective Club novels, but his collection of folktales is very good. Anyway, it's called The Guinea Fowl. I had to look up what a guinea fowl looked like, and they're really quite adorable. Mzizi was a rich man, a man with many cattle and a lot of land. You would think he would have been very happy, for he had a devoted and lovely wife. But years had passed, and there were no children. His wife's name was Pity Pity, and she could see his interest waning. The look in his eyes was not as devoted as it had once been. He had no children he could be proud of. And then one day, Mzizi came home with a second wife. And Pity Pity had to move to another little hut on the opposite side of the kraal. She was so lonely. She was heartbroken. At night, she could hear the laughter coming from the big house across the kraal. As Mzizi and his new wife talked and laughed, and it wasn't long before there was a child on the way. And then more time passed, and there was another child. Pity Pity was happy for her husband, for she could see how proud he was of being the father of children. So she brought presents to the children, but his new wife rebuffed her. Mzizi wasted years on you, and you gave him no children. Look, I have been married to him for 2 years, and he already has 2 children. Go away, we don't want your presents. She went back to her hut. Life seemed very lonely. Even so, she still went out to work in her field. She plowed her field with the team of oxen that she had. And one day as she was plowing, she heard squawk, squawk, squawk in the bushes. And out walked a guinea fowl. He came right up to her and said, I'm lonely. You're lonely. Will you adopt me to be your child, and we won't be lonely anymore? I can't have a child as a guinea fowl. Everyone would mock me. The guinea fowl was a persistent creature and kept coming back every day. Finally, one day he said, if I just stay with you at night, nobody will know. I'll leave in the morning, squawk. She thought about it. Okay, that seemed like an acceptable compromise. And so that night she prepared supper for 2. And as soon as it was dark, the guinea fowl arrived at her door. In he came, and what a companionable evening they had, sitting together over that good meal that she had cooked. And time passed. And then one day, Pity Pity was out plowing her field when along came the second wife. Why are you wasting your time growing so many crops when you don't have a single mouth to feed except your own? What a waste. Pity Pity hung her head, turned away, and kept working. The guinea fowl child was in the bushes, and he overheard. He was not going to put up with an insult against his mother. He sang out a little guinea fowl song. Squawk, all my friends, squawk, squawk, come and eat the grain of the second wife. Come and eat the grain of the second wife. Now she'd gone back and she was plowing her field. And along came all the guinea fowl friends of Pity Pity's guinea fowl child. They began to eat all the grain. The second wife was furious. She took a big stick and she began to beat those guinea fowl and she killed them. She even killed Pity Pity's own guinea fowl child. I should have warned you animals will be harmed in this storm. She took them back to her hut and prepared a lovely feast for her husband Zizi and herself. Oh, by the time they'd finished, they were so full, their bellies were almost bursting, and they were laughing. And Zizi said, "Oh, what a good wife you are to make such a meal for me." And then all of a sudden, squawk, squawk, the guinea fowl began to sing from their bellies. They were horrified. They grabbed sharp knives, stabbed themselves in the stomach, and out came the guinea fowl, all whole. The guinea fowl went back to Pity Pity. Zizi and his second wife, I'm sorry to inform you, died. As a result of this, Pity Pity inherited all Zizi's cattle and land. And after that, there was no shortage of men wishing to marry her, for she had such a curious and interesting child. Now, people have asked me after I tell this story, what happened to Zizi's two children? And the storyteller didn't tell me, but I suspect Pity Pity took them in and they all lived quite happily after that.
Wow. What a lovely story. Absolutely. Right.
Somebody wrote in the chat after I told that a few nights ago, First Wife's Club. I guess there's a movie about women taking revenge on first wives.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, so I'm going to go to Julian in the Cotswolds, then I'm going to do one. And then we'll go to Despina, Jessica. My friend over in Greece. Right, so Julian, from the Cotswolds, Shipston on Stour.
Yes. Well, this isn't a story from Shipston on Stour. This one comes from Eritrea, the people who comes from the Mensa, the Habab, and the Beni Amer people who live in the mountains of western Eritrea. But it's said that before they arrived, a tribe of giants lived in that land, and some say that God created the giants first, and that later God made people in the size that we are now. Now, the giants were truly giant. They used water skins that were made of elephant hides. Their spears were as big as trees, and the pebbles they used in their slings were not pebbles, but huge boulders. They roasted whole cows over their fires for a single meal, and drank milk from enormous vats that would serve you or I as a bath, never mind a drinking vessel. Now, when other tribes came into the country looking for water for their cattle and goats, the giants killed them or drove them away. And many of the warriors of the Mensa and the Habab tribes were killed trying to hold their watering holes against the giants. And the giants are gone today, but you can still see the great stones that they used for the foundations of their houses. And here and there, people will find the remains of the enormous tombs that they used, in which they were buried. And the story is about how the giants finally disappeared. Because it's said that what happened was that God looked down on the two races of people that he created, the giants and the regular sized people like you and I. And he realized that the world was out of balance. And he called a council with the giants and he said, "You must change your ways. You use too much, you consume too much. The other people that I've created have no chance. You know, you eat as much at one meal as they would eat at a single, this would serve them for a whole week. You drink so much milk, you drive them away from any chance of having a proper life. You do not share. You disturb the balance. You must change. But the giants were proud and they were arrogant, and they said, we will not change. We are as you have created us, O Lord. If there is a fault here, it is yours. It is not ours. We are simply following our nature. This is the way we are, and we will not change. And they left the meeting, and God was angry. But then God realized that there were two of the giants who had not left. And they came to God and they said, we have been trying to change our people's ways. We understand what you're saying. It's true. There are too many of us. We eat too much. We drink too much. The small people have as much right to live as we do, but we don't give them a chance. But none of our people will listen to us. And God said, well, I was going to curse your people and drive you out of the world. But since you two have shown that there is good in your people, I will give you the choice. I can either curse the people or I can bless them. But either way, they will leave the world. And so the two people said, well, who would ask for a curse from their own God? We will take your blessing, Lord, if that is all that we have. And God said, very well, here is my blessing upon you. Amongst your people, sons are believed to be a blessing. And calves, as opposed to bullocks, female calves are believed to be a blessing as well. So here is my blessing to you. From now on, all your people, all your women will have children, but they will only bear male children. And all your cows will bear calves, but they will only bear female calves. And that is how it will be. And with that blessing, you will leave the world. And so the two people returned to their tribe and they told everybody else what God had told them. And to begin with, they were not believed. But as the weeks and the months and the years went by and no female children were born and no male calves were born, it became true. What God had told them was coming to pass. Women gave birth only to sons. Cows gave birth only to female cows. And the sons grew up, but it was time for them to marry, but there were no women for them to marry. The calves grew up and became cows, but there were no bulls for them to mate with. So in time, no more children were born to the giants and no more calves were born to the cattle. People grew old and died. Cattle grew old and died, and the tribe of the giants withered. And at last, the chief called a council of all the old people who were still alive, and he said, we can see we're dying out from these blessings. Let us not linger here anymore. We can no longer hold our watering holes. We have no cattle left, few enough cattle left to even need watering holes. Let us each build our own graves and enter them, and that way we will leave this world with dignity and with our blessings. So every one of the giants built themselves a tomb and covered it with a roof of stones, after which they entered, closed up the opening, and lay down there and died. And thus the giants perished and left the world. Now the roofs of the tombs fell in long ago, and all that remains are piles of stones. But the people of Eritrea, particularly the tribes of the Mensa, the Habab, the Beni Amar, and the Kunama people, remember what happened to the giants. And sometimes they will point to these tombs. And when life seems a little bit too generous to them, they will say, take care. Let us not die of our blessings like the giants did. Thank you.
Wow, that's lovely. Yeah. So you know that there's many giant stories in Wales.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I love telling them. I tell them from time to time. So, right, I'm going to do a Jack story. And you can see why. As I'm doing it, you'll be able to see why. And then Despina, she managed to con me into doing one of her muses, and we ended up having a conversation about these personal stories and where we are. And then, so I had a long think through the repertoire and this is the one that's came out because I decided to take my Land Rover out for a walk through a run. I've got a Series 1 Land Rover, and it doesn't get used very often. I took it down the lane, turned right, but something went wrong, and just as I was going to the crossroads, the thing stopped. Now, you are looking at probably the worst mechanic of all. I just can't mend anything. I'm hopeless at it. And it was coming down in the evening, and the idea was to go for a run, round, have a couple of pints, and come home again. I thought, well, I'll just walk up to the Wenlock Edge Inn, which is a pub on the top of the Wenlock Edge, and I live at the bottom here in Shropshire. Now, I don't know if this happens in your countries, but it happens in here that sometimes on a Sunday evening, about this time of the evening in the summer, the Jehovah's Witnesses turn up and sing songs to the post box. Now, there's nobody else there. They all turn up, and their singing is really, really nice. And sometimes they wear sort of the Amish ones join them as well. So they're wearing the old clothes and all the rest of it. Anyway, they were doing it that night, and I was trying to walk past, and they caught me, and they said, Mike, he said, why didn't you come in and join us? Well, I can't sing, and I didn't particularly want to do it then. So I was trying to sneak away. And as I was just sneaking away, one of them turned around and goes, can you show me your Bible? I goes, well, we got a family Bible. We keep it in the house, but you don't walk around with a Bible. And they said, you should walk around with a Bible wherever you go, Mike. And she gave me a little Bible. And do you know the little red Gideon Bibles that you get in hotel rooms? They're about that thick, and they're only about that big. And I said, thank you very much. It was a gift, so you don't turn gifts down, but I stuck it in my pocket, and off I went. Now, just as I was walking round and I got to the top of the Wenlock Edge, just as you go up there, there's a railway line. And I'm having to walk round this railway line, and I knew that the day was going from bad to worse because I could see the devil sat up there waiting for me. Now, you could always spot him because he's got a red skin, 2 pointy ears, and his tail comes over his shoulder, and he's also got boots on to hide his hooves. And I recognised him from miles away. There's no point turning around and going back in the other direction because he just jumps over and waits for you in that direction. So I go walking past. And you know when you don't want to talk to someone and you go, all right, and I'm walking past, and he goes, I want to talk to you, Rust. And I goes, what do you want to talk about? And he goes, in my hand here, I have the ticket for the Euro lottery, 200 million euros. And it's for next week, and it's the winning ticket. And I'll give it to you on one condition. And I goes, go on then, what's your condition? So all you got to do is answer 3 questions. I've got to answer 3 questions, and I get that. And he said, yeah, and what happens if I don't get them all right? Oh, you have to go to hell for eternity. Well, I don't know, because I'm not really educated very well, how long eternity is. But it seemed quite a long time, whichever way it is. Anyway, but I looked him in the eyes, and I figured he wasn't that clever. So I goes, go on then. 200 million euros. I could run some seriously good storytelling festivals with that kind of money. I could pay a lot of storytellers an awful lot of money. Go on then, I said, give me your 3 questions. And he goes, how many stars are there in the sky? Well, that's easy. It's the same number of grains of sand there are on Blackpool Beach. If you don't believe me, go and count them both. And he looked at me and he went, yeah. All right, then, how deep is the deepest part of the sea? Well, that's easy as well. It's a stone's throw. You chuck a stone in the top, and the stone always goes to the very bottom. So the deepest part of the sea is a stone's throw. It's easy. And I'm just getting a bit cocky now. And I was thinking, I've got this. This is going to be good fun. So I asked your 3rd question. And he goes, tell me what I'm thinking. I goes, well, that's easy. You're thinking I don't know the answer. He said, wrong. I was thinking about my breakfast. I ended up in hell. Now, I didn't particularly like hell from the first time I put the foot in it. The simple reason was that it was being run by female feminists, woke people, green women. And they all looked at me and thought, we're going to make your life really fun down here, Russ. And I thought, oh, this is the last place I really want to be. They closed all the bars. They put all the fire up so it was too hot. I don't like it too hot in the first place. And I said, the best thing I can do is to go and sit in the corner and sit down all by myself and go and hide. So I went and found a little corner in hell, and I sat down there and there was just a little candle there, and there was a little seat there, and I wondered how long eternity was going to last for. So I emptied out my pockets. Well, in my pockets, I got my penknife, got a couple of pounds, got a handkerchief. I was going through my pockets, and I found that Bible. I thought, a Bible? How long is it going to take to read a Bible from beginning to end? That is going to take an eternity. At least it's something to do. Now, I'm not very well educated, so when I read, I have to read out loud. So I sat down there and moved the candle around a bit, and I turned the page. Well, there was this story about God, he made the world in 6 days, and the seventh day had a day off. Then there was a Garden of Eden. Then this woman picked up and took the apple and took a bit in it, and God said, you've got to leave. Then Noah turned up because there was a great big flood going up and a great big flood going down. And he was halfway up a mountain. He was just about to cut his son in half. And God said, no, you don't need to do that. That's fine. I'll bring a rainbow down to promise never to do a flood again. And I read all that, and there was a little imp coming past. And he goes, what are you doing, Mike? And I said, well, I'm reading the Bible. And he said, well, that was quite an interesting story. Do you mind if I sit and listen? I said, no, you can sit and listen if you like. Be a bit of company. So he just sat there all by himself. He was only about 3 foot tall, had long hair, and he didn't have any feet, and shoes on his feet. And one of those triad things with a bit of skin hanging on it. And he just sat down cross-legged in front of me. Well, they all went to Egypt. Well, there was this baby who floated up and down the river a bit. Then there was 7 good years and 7 bad years. Then this fella said, let my people go. They walked across the desert. The sea parted. When the sea came back, washed the army that was following him. They went out to this place called Jericho, walked around it 7 times, and our wall fell down. Now, when I finished reading that, there wasn't one imp there. There was 5 or 6. And they said, do you mind if we listen? I went, no, not at all. So they all started around. And then I turned the page again. And there was this great big skinhead with a load of tattoos. And this little fella called David, he picked his sling up, got him straight between the eyes and knocked him over. Then they all went down and built a great big cathedral in a place called Jerusalem. Then there were some really good stories. There was one about Daniel and some lions, and Samson had his hair cut off. There was one about Rachel. There was one about Esther the spy. And there was one about Jonah and the great big fish and all that. Then there was a whole load of wars and everything else. And I turned the page, and that was the end of the New Testament. Well, by then, all the imps in hell, they'd all sat down in front of me. They'd had some elections and got rid of all the female green feminists that weren't going to like me in the first place. And they'd had some elections, and we got a whole load of proper line shit politicians like everybody else had. And someone had opened up the pubs, and they gave me a pint of beer. And he sat down there, and they said, come on, Mike. He said, this is the biggest audience you've got. The whole of hell is listening. Turn the page again. And I turned the page. And there was this fella called John, and he was sat in the river a lot. Then there was a whole first Christmas they'd ever seen. It was absolutely wonderful. There was this little baby, there was Joseph, and there was Mary, and some shepherds, and 3 wise men, and all sorts of things. And everything was happening all at once. And it was the best Christmas they could ever remember. They really, really enjoyed it. Then he got to 12, and he went down and said, you're doing it all wrong. And they said, yes, little boy. And they sent him back again. When he was 33, he decided he was going to save the world. Well, he went down to find some fishermen, and they were just fishing by the Sea of Galilee. And he said, I'm going to save the world. I'm going to tell everybody, just treat everybody like you want to be treated yourself. And they said, yeah, okay. And he walked across the water a couple of times just to prove he good. He went into the desert, spent 40 days out there, came back and had the biggest barbecue you ever see with some bread and some fishes. Then he started telling a few stories. There was one about the talents. There was one about the sower. There was one about a good Samaritan. And there's one I can't never remember. Then he went to a party, and they ran out of wine, so he turned all the water into wine. A jolly good lad, he'd be useful in Shropshire, he would. Then he turned around, and his best mate died, and he brought him back to life again. And everything was going very well, and everybody was listening to him. And he just said the same thing over and over again: just treat everybody like you want to be treated. So by then he had a posse of people they called the apostles, and they said, well, why don't we go to Jerusalem for Easter? And they said, yeah, okay, let's do that. So they went down to Jerusalem for Easter, and he went in on a donkey, and all sorts of strange things happened. So there was the Last Supper, and it was Judas's time to pay the bill, and they handed him the bill, and he said, where am I going to get 30 pieces of silver from? His best friend turned round and denied him before the cock crowed. A fellow called Barabbas, who was a right little crook, got let off. Then the Romans turned up and said, we're not having this anymore, you're causing trouble. And they went and nailed him on this cross with 2 other places, a place called Gethsemane. And the son was so embarrassed he went and hid behind the moon. Well, at the time I read all that, everybody was grumbling. They would say, well, we like that chap and we like his stories and we like the way he's doing things. And now you've gone and killed him off. So we don't think much of that at all. I went, hang on a minute. So again, I turned the page. So I said, don't worry about it. It's all come back. So, and I told the story about how Thomas the Doubter, I felt ever so sorry for this fella called Thomas the Doubter, because for the whole of eternity, because he was just looking to see if there was any marks in his hand. Then he went up these stairs to heaven. Then there was a great thing about rockets and aliens turned up. And I actually turned the very last page when the devil turned up. And he said, what the hell's going on here? And I said, what do you mean, what the hell's going on here? He said, what are you doing? And I said, well, you sent me to hell and I was brought to hell. And the only thing I had to read was the Bible. So I read the Bible. He said, you read the Bible in hell? Well, you bloody piss off. And the last thing we don't want is any storytellers down there either. So I'm going to ban all storytellers from us. So if you're a storyteller, the one thing you're never going to do is end up in hell. Anyway, I ended up back on the railway track, just under the Wenlock Edge. And I spent the next half hour looking for that ticket because I could not find that ticket anywhere. It was worth 200 million euros. And could I find it? Anyway, so I walked into the pub. As I walked into the pub, I noticed my Land Rover was outside because two of my mates, Edward and Brian, they'd fixed it and come up and said, come on, you can buy us a beer. Man. So we're all sat there having a beer, looking over the Wenlock Edge and my Land Rover, and all these imps started coming up out of the road. And I looked at them and said, what are you not doing? And I said, well, we've had a bit of a meeting in hell and we've decided we don't like the boss anymore. So we've gone on strike. In fact, what we're going to do, because we like that bloke in that book you called the Bible. So just treat everybody like you want to be treated. So we're going to go around the world and say that to everybody. So it doesn't matter where you are. You can be in the Cotswolds, you can be on Syros in Greece, and you can be in Nova Scotia, and you can be in the other part of Canada. So if you see a little chap, he's got a bald head and long hair, he's got no feet, and he's walking around and he's saying, I'm an imp, and I want to convert you to Christianity. He's one of the ones I converted to Christianity the day I ended up in hell. Okay. Well, you're all smiling. So that's an old Jack story that I converted. I made me Jack in that. So I'm getting into these personal stories. I'm going to tell that to Narika from Singapore. The next time she has a personal storytelling thing, I'm going to go and tell her that and see what she thinks. Right. So that's my little effort at the moment for personal stories. So I hope you all enjoyed it. And it's in Duncan Williamson's Jack the Lad book, if you really want to find it. But I know quite a few Jack stories, so if you ever want to find it, I can tell you how to tell. It sounds very clever, but it's not that clever. And I was in the cathedral in Hereford one day, and I started telling it, and I saw the bishop leaning up against a post as I started. And he was just leaning up against the post listening. And just as I finished, he walked past and he went, that was very good, but you missed a bit out. Turned off and walked off. Right. So we're going to go, Mike. Santa Mike, Flatterty.
I thought you said Despino was next. Yeah, it's Despino.
On my list, I've got Mike.
Oh, right.
Okay, I'll go. Despina, can you go next, Despina? Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, if Despina's happy with that. I was going to tell a personal story because I thought you were actually going to tell a personal story. And I thought, oh, that's a lovely idea. I'll do a personal. But I'm still going to, because why not? It starts, well, some of the people here, it was a long time ago. It was nearly 40 years ago. So for me, that's almost half a lifetime ago. And for you, Mike, yeah, almost half a lifetime for you as well. For the others, not so long. But on this particular night, I'd been at work all day and I'd come home grumpy and miserable. And Sue, my lovely wife, Saint Sue, I call her, said, don't forget, you've got the PTA meeting tonight. And I said, what? Yeah, you got PTA tonight. And I thought, oh, God, I've been lumbered. And I went along to the PTA, and it was the governors and the PTA meeting together at my children's school. My two sons, the two boys. And I was the new guy on the PTA. I'd just been elected in September. This was now end of October. And it's all going along nicely, and people were getting given jobs, and I was keeping my head down and not getting given any jobs. And I was thinking, this is all right, really. You know, I've had my dinner. And then he said, oh, now we've got to look at the Christmas fate. And he said, we haven't got a Father Christmas. In those days, no one was called Santa over here. We haven't got a Father Christmas. And we're going to need one. And of course, everyone's busy. Suddenly, everyone all on the table, they were busy. Yeah, they couldn't look up. They couldn't answer. I was the same. And he said, Mr. Faculty. I said, yeah. He said, you're the new boy on the Parent Teachers Association, and we haven't given you a job yet for the Christmas fete. So would you be Father Christmas for us? And I was looking around. I was young, I was thin then, and I had a ginger beard, a ginger moustache, and big ginger sideburns. And this is ridiculous. I look around there, all these old fat blokes without beards on the committee who would have looked much better as Father Christmas with the white cotton woolly beard they had in those days. And I said, well, if we can't get anyone better to volunteer, no response. Yes, I'll do it. I can do it, but I don't think I'll be particularly good. And I was quite right, actually. But what happened was I went home and I said to Sue, I've been lumbered. I've got to be Father Christmas at the boys' Christmas fete. She said, well, you probably like it. I said, I can't see how. And what they had was a cloak with a hood. It was a red coat with this little tiny white line of cotton woolly stuff around it, not like proper fur. And it's cottony woolly pretend beard. And I didn't have white gloves. I didn't have Christmas glasses. And this stupid little beard, you could see ginger beard all the way around it. You could see ginger sideburns. And I looked in the mirror and I thought, oh, this is rubbish. I was going to be so rubbish. And I went along to the fete and I went in and I sat in the grotto and I thought, right, I just wait for these bloody kids to come in. And then the very first kid who came in, a little girl, she ran up and she grabbed my legs because that was all she could reach. And she said, I love you, Father Christmas. And I couldn't believe it. All of the children that came in, apart from my sons, thought I was Father Christmas. I had the red, I had the white, but even with the ginger, and I even had ginger eyebrows then. They all just believed it. They all just came in and loved me and told me what they wanted for Christmas. And I got home and I said to Sue, I want to do that again. And I've nearly 40 years now. I've played Father Christmas, subsequently Santa. And I tell you, the joy of it, it never ends. Every year it's wonderful. And now I actually make money doing it, which is even better. And that's a personal story, such as it is.
Well, thank you very much. I did Santa for the first time this time. I got conned into it as well in Much Wenlock.
Isn't it wonderful? It's a wonderful thing to do.
And I actually, when I finished doing it, as you're going to be really surprised, everybody, I'm looking back on the screen because I decided to go for a pint. I know it doesn't happen very often in my life. Anyways, but the one thing you can't do is be Santa Claus and go into the pub next door because all the kids and the mums and dads will be there and everything. So I drove to the next town, which is Church Stretton, and I live halfway in between. So I drove, it's about 12, 13 miles. I drove down there and I sat in the pub and I started talking to a complete stranger. And I did the, blah, this is what I've done, da, 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 and everything else. And he's only a young guy, he was 18, 19 or something, a young farmer from around here. I know the family vaguely. And he went, did you enjoy it, Mike? And I went, well, I did actually. And what an astute thing to ask as well. And I went, yes, I think I did. And he said, well, if you enjoyed it, go and do it again, because I think you'll be a good one. And he turned around and walked. I've never seen him since, and I probably won't see him again. But it was at that moment I decided I might have another go at it. So we'll see how we get on. Right, now, Despina, you're going to be next, I promise. Evita, you're going to tell a story. Put your hand up and wave if you want to. Right, you go after Despina, okay?
Okay, great. So, I thought that I might sing something for you tonight, Mike.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Which language we doing?
Yeah, you have not heard me speak any Greek here, have you?
No, I haven't heard you sing ever.
Okay, cool. So this is a Greek folk song, like one of the ballads, you'd say. I really
Okay.
love. And Evita, you might like it. I saw you holding the baby. Some of the grannies used to use it as a lullaby. So I'll try to sing and translate, but not each verse, because sometimes, you know, you have to let the melody flow. So I'll do some in the end of the. I can't hear you, Mike, but that's all right.
Just sing it in your language. Don't worry about translating.
Now I want you to know what it says. It's called Mario the Shepherdess. Μια βόσκο που αγάπησα. I loved a little shepherdess. Μια ζηλεμένη κόρη. Alas, worthy of envy. Και την αγάπησα πολύ, μα ήμουν αλάλητο πουλί, ήμουν αλάλητο πουλί, 10χρονών αγόρι. And I loved her dearly, but I was a bird that had yet to sing. I was a bird that had yet to sing, a 10-year-old boy. Μια μέρα που καθόμασταν, one day as we were both laying, στα χόρτα ξαπλωμένοι, lying on the fresh green grass. Μαριό της λέω σ' αγαπώ, μα ντρέπομαι να σου το πω, μα ντρέπομαι να σου το πω, τρελαίνομαι για σένα. Mario, I tell her, I love you, but I'm too shy to let you know. I'm just too shy to let you know that I am mad about you. Από τη μέση μ' άρπαξε. She put her hands around my waist. Με φίλησε στο στόμα. And tenderly she kissed me. Και μου είπε μ' αναστέναγμο, γιατί σ' αγάπη στο καημό, γιατί σ' αγάπη στο καημό, είσαι μικρός ακόμα. And she told me with the deepest sigh that for love's yearning and desire, you're still too young, my sweet boy.
That was just lovely. So where did you learn that from your mother and grandmother, or did it come down through the family?
Probably. I have fading memories from my childhood. I don't know exactly where I caught it from, but I've loved it all my life. And there's another verse that says that he grew up and went looking for her, but she was in love with another man, but he would never forget her kiss. Like you never forget your first kiss now, do you? But I'd like to leave it with an open end. Perhaps he came back later and perhaps she was available then. Who knows?
Oh, that was lovely. That's brilliant. I've never heard you sing before. Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
So we're going to go. Yeah, absolutely. Right, Evita. You're muted.
Yeah, I know. It takes a while. This tablet is a bit slow, so I do hope it waits. I've just come off the train from an event in Zurich. It was called Of Loss and Love. And it was really quite amazing. It was a witnessing and a sharing of grief with people who had recently arrived from Palestine and are the very few refugees that we accept. I was going to do a poem, but it's too depressing. We are in too gorgeous a mood. So instead, rather than one of my own stories and rather than one of my pretty activist poems, I will tell you a story from Gaza, a folk tale. And it's always so great to have you here, Mike. Mike at Marrakesh was my anchor. He sort of teleported from wherever he was, and he was there when I was telling in the tent, which was really lovely. So I don't know if Mike's heard that one or not.
Which
But,
Mike are you talking to?
Oh, Mike here, right here. Mike Fagerty.
The
Right
old
here.
Mike.
Oh, Mike.
Yeah, old,
No, I'm just
old,
taking
old
off.
Mike.
No, I'm just taking all the credit for that. That's all.
Oh, not you, Mike. Sorry. No, not you. Because, I thought I was looking at him right now. So, hey, Allah, hey, Allah, hey, Allah, hey, Allah, hey, Allah, hey, Allah. Abu Hamdan was a fisherman in Gaza. He and his son would go out every day to fish and to sell the fish at markets. This was in the old days, not right now. But they had no luck. They didn't know what they did wrong. They would sing. They would go further out, deeper than they'd ever been. They went east, they went west, and there was just no fish. So Abu Hamdam's wife said, Abu, why don't you cast the nets in our son's name and maybe Allah will hear you and bring you luck. So out they went the next morning and they threw those nets out and they sang, Hey, Allah, hey, la, hey, Allah, hey, la. And they pulled. I might even need your help a bit here to pull. And they landed a massive fish. He was so massive, they nearly sank the boat. Quickly, Abu Hamdam and Hassan, the son, rowed back to beach. And Abu Hamdam said to his son, now, son, I'm telling you, watch this fish. Do not take your eyes off him. Do not let him escape. I'm going to fetch the cart to take him to market. This is the biggest fish we've ever caught. I wish Omar was here with his funny translations. So anyway, the father walks off and the dutiful son, he sits there, young man that he is, very young man, and he looks at the fish. It's a big one. And suddenly, as it goes in those stories, the fish spoke to him. Oh, dear Hassan, please let me go. Please let me go. I can't, said Hassan. You heard my father. I've got to watch you. I can't let you go. Please, I am a fish king. I have so many children. I have to protect them from the smaller fish. But I can't, said Hassan. I can't. We are poor. Oh, do not worry about that. If you let me go, I make you a promise. You will be looked after. You will never be poor again. And Hassan, being the kind young boy he was, what do you think he did? He let that fish go. And the fish swam off, waved at him with one little fin, and it was gone. Now imagine when Abu Hadnal came back and he saw the boat was empty, he was vexed. He was more than vexed. He was angry. He shouted at his son. He was so cross, he didn't even think clearly. And he said, I think you are old enough to find your own way if you cannot listen. I'm casting you out. And believe it or not, he did. So he cast out his son. Now imagine young Hassan walking on that Gaza beach back and forth with his head bowed, looking very sad. And suddenly he had a tap on his shoulder and he looked around. There was a young boy pretty much his own age. And he said, hi, salam, I am Omar. My father just cast me out. Oh, how strange, said Hassan. So did mine. Oh, let's be brothers. Let's take care of each other, said Omar. And they did. They became very, very close. They looked after each other against gangs and robbers. They looked after each other when one was sick. They looked after each other when they were looking for work. And together, the brothers traveled. And these travels in looking for work took them to a city where it was proclaimed through all the town squares that the king's daughter would not speak anymore. She had become silent, and everybody who tried to help could not. So, of course, if anyone could make that princess speak, they would get her hand in marriage. Oh, said Omar, that sounds great. I shall go and do that. But Hassan said, no, 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 no. Omar, my brother, we've got each other. We've got everything we need. We don't need riches or anything. And what's more, I've been told that anyone who fails that quest, off with their head, execution on the spot. Omar said, yes, yes, but still, I'm determined to try. So off went Omar to the castle, and the vizier took him straight to the princess's quarters. Let me tell you a story, said Omar. You are not here to tell stories, said the vizier. You are here on the quest to make our princess speak. Bear with me, said Omar. Once there was a carpenter, a painter, and a hermit, and they were in the woods together. They were camping out there, and they decided to build a fire to protect each other and themselves from beasts and robbers. But of course, it was important that one of them would guard the fire overnight. And so, as it happens, the carpenter went first. The others were snoring away, and the carpenter sat, and a fire crackled, and it was warm and glowing, and the carpenter found himself nodding off. So he saw a piece of wood, a log, and he thought, oh, well, I might as well keep myself busy. And he began to whittle away at that big log, and he shaped it like a woman. He got a tap on the shoulder. My turn, said the painter. Oh, the carpenter was very glad, and he went off to sleep. And the painter, he sat there, he twiddled his thumbs, he stroked his beard. He looked into that fire, and that fire crackled, and that fire glowed, and it was nice and warm. And his eyes began to droop, and he looked around. I need to do something to keep myself awake. And he sees this piece of wood in the shape of a beautiful woman and goes, I've got an idea. I'm going to perfect her. And the painter took his paintbrush and he painted lips. He painted eyes. You can just imagine how beautiful they were. He painted clothes on her. And finally, it was the hermit's turn. The painter went to sleep. The hermit sat by the fire. And he looked around. He looked at the flames and he looked around, and he was about to pray when he sees the statue of the beautiful woman. And he instantly, deeply fell in love. He dropped to the floor and prayed to Allah, whatever you want to do, Allah, but please make her be real. And he prayed. And he wished and he visualized. And the sun came up and the other two men woke up. And by Allah, the statue was a real live woman. There she stood. And of course, there was an immediate fight between you three fellas. Which one of you, Julian and Mike, should get to marry her? Of course, it's me, said Mike the carpenter. I formed her. No, 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 said the other Mike. I am the painter. I made her beautiful. And Hermit threw up his hands and said, but Julian threw up his hands and said, but I love her. What to do? So, said Omar to the vizier, who do you think should marry the beautiful woman. Well, the princess's voice came and said, of course he should marry the hermit. Went the vizier. You spoke. And he ran straight off to fetch the king. The king came running. My daughter. He kissed her hands, he kissed her dress, he kissed her feet. Speak to me. The princess did not speak. Well, I'm sorry, said the king to Omar. If I don't witness it myself, it doesn't count. Well, I shall give you some signs, said Omar. I shall give you some signs, and if you tell me what it is, I tell you if you are correct. And Omar pointed at the king, at the vizier, and at himself. Well, that's clear, said the king. I am the king, he's the vizier, and you are the peasant. Omar shook his head. He went again. He pointed at the king. He pointed at the vizier. He pointed at himself. Oh, well, said the vizier, this is a very easy sign to read. He rules. I execute the rules, and you obey, he said, and he was about to take out his sword. But Omar shook his head and went, no, that's not correct. Ha, said the princess, I can tell you why he should marry the hermit. For the carpenter is just like you, my father. You have made me. Vizier, you have educated me. But the hermit has loved me. He sought my love. Oh, said the king, this is it. Call out for the wedding. Get the baths ready. She has a husband and she speaks. But when the king turned around, Omar was gone. Omar had run outside and he pulled Hassan and said, Hassan, you are to come inside and marry the princess. Hassan said, no. You're the one who fulfilled the quest. I cannot marry her. Omar said, Hassan, we look like twins. We are brothers. I am, in fact, the fish king that made you a promise. If I go into the bathhouse now, I turn into a fish. But please, I'm fulfilling my promise. I want to go back to my children. I love you. And Hassan and Omar embraced. I love you too, brother. Thank you. I always keep my promises, said Omar. And off he went down the beach into the water, and he went off. Hassan and the princess, who never noticed the difference, married and almost lived happily ever after. Actually, they did, in fact. There was just one thing. The princess could never work out why Hassan absolutely refused to eat fish. Mountainy, al-jamalu, al-jalalu, awazana wa bahanu, firuba. That's the homeland song of Palestinian people. Free Palestine. Thank you.
That was a lovely story, and it's well told. We have a version of that. It's a Celtic story from the Highlands of Scotland that Duncan Williamson told me one night. And when he got to the point where, who's going to marry the doll, it's always a doll, and it's always, the answer is, ask the doll who she wants to marry. Give her the choice, you see. And so that was the answer to that. And the other thing Duncan told me once, he said, when there's a princess and she's in a tower and she doesn't want to talk and she's about 14, who the hell would want to marry her in the first place? A snotty little teenager who sat in there and spoilt to hell and's not talking. That nobody will go anywhere bloody near it with a barge pole. Duncan, he's always thought he'd put that in at some point every time that there's a Cinderella or something in the princess in the tower, that was always his answer.
And I add a bit to that, Mike.
Yeah.
I was just writing in the chat to Evita that there is a Greek version of that story.
Yes.
minutes earlier.
Christina, can I ask you, is
Yeah.
it what I've noticed in Morocco as well, when Omar and Walid and everybody told the longer stories, that they tend in the Middle East, they tend to have a story within a story within a story sometimes.
Yes.
Is that the same in that version of yours? Is there a story within the story?
Yes, exactly. There's no fish in the beginning, and actually,
Yeah.
the teenage princess is a little bit like Mike described her. So she's the one who's having them cut off their heads. She's the villain until, you know, she gets to be tamed, let's say. So this technique in fairy tales, in writing a story, is called enkivotismos in Greek, which means inboxing. Like you have a smaller box inside the box, you know, like the Russian dolls.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I tell that to my students, my language students, the one, not the whole thing, just the part with the three friends, and then you get to ask who's going to marry the girl. I have the girl actually speak up and tell them that she's not interested in marriage and she just wants to go out and get to know this new world they brought her to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's this version
Absolutely,
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, no, I've
When we
heard that
were-
as well.
When we were at Les Etoiles, I think it was, and we were going to have a gig. There were 2 rooms with us storytellers in Marrakesh, that is Julian, and no one turned up in our room, and no one turned up I said, go and check the others. We just go and join them and listen to their stories, and no one had turned up there as well, because either the school kids got lost or whatever, as it goes in Marrakesh. So I said, why don't we all just nurture each other with stories? And then Mohammed, the young translator, he told us a very long story, and Danny and what's the Irish girl, Iris, and everyone, we were just like, because in that story there was Hansel and Gretel, there was the trolls, there was Baba Yaga. The story just, and then it had magic water and everything, but the story went for about 15, 20 minutes. And we all sat there and saying, there's several of the folk tales we heard as kids in this one Moroccan tale.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
In the Greek version of your story, the one you just told us, there are 3
Not-
stories until he
okay.
gets to marry the princess.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's
Yeah, carry
I
on,
do
Mike.
that sometimes when there's a story that leads into another story. But the one it was told to me by Suzanne Thomas, it was, and there's a tree with a whole load of golden leaves on it, and she's on a journey, so she sees the tree, and she comes back. Just as she comes back, a fairy from a different story comes up, takes all the leaves, and just disappears with all the leaves again, and she just carries on. And it was the only reason that tree was there in the story, and it really, really amused me. I thought that was absolutely lovely. Right, it's 7:10. I'm happy to see you. Do you want to go around again? What I would like to do is for everybody to tell a joke, because I'm short of jokes at the moment. And the only one I really know is I've got a really good Donald Trump joke. And so I'm going to, does anybody know any jokes? They don't have to be topical, political, anything that's sort of current. What's the current sort of jest in where you are at the moment?
I could tell you a Newfoundland story.
Sorry, I
joke.
missed that.
Okay,
Yeah.
there's a specific kind of story here called a Newfoundland joke, and it's always meant to make fun of Newfoundlanders. I mean, these are these ethnic jokes that always disparage somebody, but they can be really fun. I'll think of which one I'll tell. There were 3 Newfoundlanders who were thrown in prison in some country during a war. There are so many wars, I can't remember which one it was, but anyway, there they all were in the prison cell together in the dark. And one of them was moving along the floor and felt something metallic and shiny and rubbed it. Now, one of them was from Toronto, one of them was from Montreal, and the other one was from Newfoundland. And so we'll get a bit of the Newfoundland tang in it. Anyway, the one from Toronto felt this this thing, and he picked it up, and it was a magic lamp. As soon as he rubbed it, out came the genie. Your wish is my command. Oh, for heaven's sakes, get me back to the corner of Bloor and Yonge Street in Toronto as fast as you can. And he was gone. Well, the fellow from Quebec poked around in the dark, and he found the lamp. He rubbed it, and the genie came. Your wish is my command. Well, then you take me back to St. Catherine right away, huh? And poof, he was gone. And that left the poor, lonely Newfoundlander in the dark, and he reached for the lamp and rubbed it, and the genie came out. Your wish is my command. And the Newfoundlander says, geez, it's some lonely in here. I wish them boys was back.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've all got a
I
version
think those
of
are
that.
universal, those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, anybody else got a joke? There's the one that came to my mind is the clever blonde joke. Do you people do blonde jokes about women who are blondes? Are you allowed to do those? No?
Not anymore. We're much now.
Because there's the clever blonde joke is set in New York, and this blonde, and she's just like a Barbie, and she's blonde as anything, and she walks into the bank and says, I want a loan, please, for $100,000. And the bank said, we like giving loans for $100,000. Come and sign on the boat. You need some collateral. And she went, what's collateral? It means, well, if you're going to loan something, you've got to put it up against a property or something. So if you don't repay the loan, we can sell the property, whatever it is, and get our money back. Oh, she meant, that's not a problem at all. And she picked her car keys up and put them on the desk. She said, I have a motor vehicle that's worth £500,000. And he said, well, what do you want to do? She said, well, I'm just off to Europe for a month. Why don't you take the car? It's outside, put it underneath the bank in the garage. And there's not a problem at all. You can just leave it there until I come back and repay you the $100,000. And the bank manager signed it. They signed it all up. And off she went to Paris. And she came back a month later, walked into the bank, said, I want my car back. And the bank manager said, yeah, no problem at all. It's £100,000 dollars is what you borrowed, plus £1,000 for setting everything up. But the interest for it was about £1,000. So that's not a problem at all. We don't owe you any money, and you don't owe us any money. All you've got to do is to transfer the £100,000 back to us in the bank, and you can have your car back. Just as a matter of interest, the bank manager said, why did you borrow £100,000 and leave it in a bank account for a month and don't touch any of it? And she said, oh, that's not a problem at all. He said, my car is worth £500,000. Your secure lockup underneath your bank is the safest car parking anywhere in the whole of New York. And now it hasn't. I left it there for a whole of a month, and it hasn't actually cost me a penny. And you've looked after it beautifully. And I know that your fellas down there have even cleaned it for me as well. So I done deal. And she walked out of the bank as happy as ever you can be. And Evita is looking at me as if she's not amused by that. I got you to smile.
No, it's I was trying to think of a joke and listen to you at the same time. It didn't work. And
Right.
I have blonde grandchildren and blonde daughters, and my daughters are strong women, and they'd probably smack you. In Australia, you can't do those jokes anymore. You can't wolf whistle in Australia. You have to be very careful how you pay a compliment. Yeah.
Well, I'm not. You want to come and sit in a pub in Shropshire at some point, because we're exactly the same as that. And when I stand up, I'm going to tell a blonde joke. You have to be really, really careful about what you do and how you do it and all the rest of it. I always,
but it depends. I mean, here it's all right because it's just us and stuff like that. As long as they're not, I don't know how other people find. If they're really demeaning or really racist, then, but you wouldn't do that. No one in here would do that,
Yeah, I've got a whole series of jokes that I was given when my father died. Now, Dad died in 2003, and he was 18 in 1945. He flew Spitfires and all that. So that was his life, right? And he collected all these jokes. And about half of them, Abita, I wouldn't dream of telling nowadays.
Yeah.
They are completely something I just wouldn't. I look at them and think, well, that is from that era, the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And that's what they thought was amusing and funny in them days. And the words that are in them and everything else. I wouldn't just dream. I wouldn't even try and modernize it. I just don't tell them. But there's some, like the Donald Trump joke, that is just upgraded. And because you just use a different politician's name. And it's the same thing and everything else. And it's a bit like telling some of the royal jokes and things like that. You know, you just, instead of using Queen Elizabeth I, you're using King Charles III. You know, it's the same joke. You just upgrade it to the people who were there. But it's always interesting. But they built a school in the 1970s, about 20 miles from where I'm at, that Lynn, my wife, used to live. And it was a school, Levita, that would have about 2,000 students. And in the 1970s, when they built it, they killed 2 people and they put 1 person in a wheelchair because they were accidents and things on the construction site. When they knocked it down recently and built a new one, in the accident book, a drill had slipped and cut someone's finger, and that was the only accident they had. So all these new health and safety stuff and everything that we sort of groan about from time to time actually works. And when you're building a school for 2,000 students, you shouldn't kill 2 people while you're building it, not in the 21st century. So we all moan about it sometimes, but there is a reason for some of it. And some of it is better for the good than it is for the bad. But sometimes, you know, manhole covers and person covers and all that kind of thing, we all cringe at. So anyway, I'll shut up now.
I was going to say, actually, Mike, that as far as the health and safety thing is concerned, that I used to work for the railway, and yeah, we used to kill we would average on killing 1 worker a week in the old days. So yeah, health and safety is actually not such a bad idea. But I was actually going to say, I don't have a joke because I can never remember jokes. I don't know why, they fall out of my brain. But Despina, the one thing I wanted to say was that that's only, I think, the second Greek folk song I've ever heard. The first one is Tokokoraki, which is kind of a bit like Old MacDonald for the Anglophones amongst us. And the only reason I know it is because it was done by a pair of comedians called Flanders and Swan, who aren't well known these days, but they're well known for the I'm a GNU song, but that's about the only one they remember.
Yeah.
But it's really there's a really fascinating story behind it, because behind the reason that this English guy Donald Swan sang Tokokoraki in the original Greek as part of their stage show, and I'll send you the link to the full thing. But it's because he was a medical worker, because he was a Quaker. He didn't fight in the Second World War, but he went as a medical worker in working in the El Nusrat refugee camp in Palestine. And most of the people there were Greek refugees from the German invasion of the Dodecanese.
Yeah.
And he was always a musician, but he said that's where he learned to love music and where music came from within, and that sort of thing. So I'll send that across to you. But it's just a really lovely story attached to that particular thing that popped into my mind. So.
No, okay. No, I must admit, I think that's probably the first folk song in Greek I've heard.
I can only imagine how that song, the Kokoraki, which means the little cockerel, how that song was taught to that man back then. That must be a story. So, Mike, I don't have a joke, but I have a short, funny story. If you, Baden's coming, if you'd like to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I told it 2 years ago in Marrakesh when I was there, because it has to do with the Sultan. Okay, so there's a fisherman, like in a bit of story, fishing with his fishing rod, and he catches a really big fish. And he's thinking about selling it. He's thinking about taking it home to his family to eat. And then he thinks about the Sultan, because in those lands, everybody knows that their Sultan is crazy about fish. It's his favorite delicacy. So he takes his big fish in his arms, it's that big, and he carries it all the way to the palace, and he asks audience with the Sultan. So he's carrying the fish, obviously he's let in. So he goes to the Sultan and he says, "Sire, this fish is for you." And the Sultan says, he's already, his mouth is dripping saliva. And he says, "Oh, thank you very much, my good man. Thank you for thinking of me. How much is it worth? How much money would you like me to pay you for the fish?" And the fisherman, he was a clever bloke, much like Mike's Jack. He says, "No, sire, I just brought it here for you. It is a present. It is a gift to your, Majesty." And the Sultan is all the more thrilled, and he says, "Oh, thank you, this is so kind. Treasurer, go to the treasurer and bring 1,000 dirhams and give them to this fellow who brought this awesome gift for me." So 1,000 dirhams back in that age was a lot of money. So he pays the money, but the Sultaness, his queen, is at his side. And the minute the man takes the money and starts walking out of his room, he's into the corridor and he's slowly going away. The queen turns to him and she says, "Husband, what was that you did? What did I do? What did I do? He brought me a fish. I needed to pay him some money. He was kind. Husband, if you gave that man 1,000 dirhams for a fish, what would you give our soldiers who win wars for us? Or what would you give your personal guard who makes sure you remain intact and there is no treason against you? What would that mean for them?" The comparison. And he says, "Oh, you're right, woman. You're right, my wife. I did it. What should I do now? Bring him back, and ask for the money back. Give the fish back. Oh, don't, but take the money back." And he says, "Well, I can't just reclaim the money for no reason." And she says, look, we'll think of something. Ask if the fish he brought is male, and if he says it is, tell him you wanted a female, or vice versa. You understand, you get it." He says, yes, great idea. So he sent his guards down the road to get that fisherman back. So they take him back to the palace, and the Sultan, when he's brought in front of him, asks, "My good man, that fish you brought me in, for which I paid you handsomely, was it a male or was it a female?" "Good sire," answers the fisherman, "I would not be so insolent as to bring your majesty either a male or a female fish. That would be too simple for your holiness, your kind sir. I brought you a hermaphrodite fish." Oh, I see, and you kept it for me. Thank you. Treasurer, give this man 1,000 dirhams more and let him go his way. So treasurer brings another bag of money, hands it to the fisherman, and the fisherman holds two bags in his hand, and he's very happy. He's made himself a fortune. So he makes his way outside the palace, and then the Sultan, dreaming of that fish and how he'd have it, turns and looks at his wife's eyes upon him. He says, oh no, I did it again, didn't I? What do I do now? What do I do? But the wife, who's watching all the time, the queen, she sees that man holding his bags, giggling on his way out of the palace. One coin escapes, falls, drops from one bag, and he turns, picks it up, puts it in the bag, and goes away. And she says, husband, did you see that? That man is greedy. One coin fell off his bag, from his bag, and he didn't even leave it for the poor. He just picked it up and put it inside, even though he already had that much money. That alone should be enough for you to reclaim the money. That's a good idea, wife. That's a good idea, he says. Guards, bring that fisherman back. So the guards grab the poor man, bring him back with his 2 bags in his hand. And the Sultan tells him what he says. I saw you, I've paid you so much money, and still 1 coin escaped you, and you didn't leave it for the poor or for anyone lucky enough to find it. You were greedy and you just grabbed it and put it inside your bag again to keep it for yourself. Now, what does that say to us, to you as a person? And the fisherman, thinking very quickly, says, but sire, look, here, look at this coin. Whose face is on the coin? Whose face is this engraved upon it? Oh, myself, of course, says the Sultan. I am the Sultan of this land, so of course my face is on my coins. You see, sire, if I left that coin on the floor, anyone would simply pass and step upon your majestic face. Now, I would not allow that, sire. You see, it was only out of reverence to you that I picked that coin. I see. That's very kind of you. Treasurer, give that man another bag of 1,000 dirhams, he says. So Treasurer takes the money. So now he grabs the 3 bags in his arms and he makes a run for it out of the palace before it's too late, and they bring him back. And they saw the fisherman again in those parts. And the Sultan had a very good meal that night, but that queen of his, well, I'm not entirely sure she had made the right choice in marriage.
It reminds me of the sailor's wife in The Fence, who I'm sure I've told once or twice over the years on this particular thing. Yeah, that's exactly. And Robin Hood, you know why Robin Hood was such a famous archer? Because he'd pick up the bow and he'd pick up the arrow and he'd shoot it against the door, and then he'd get a paint pan and he'd paint the target around the arrow. Right, so I see something before me that says Baden. Well, anybody know anybody called Baden? You know, there's a little known storyteller that's knocking around the place sometimes, that turns up sometimes just to nick everybody's stories. But is there? No, I think he's not here. Hello, Baden.
Trying to join. I'm on my phone at the moment.
You're on the toilet.
I'm on my phone.
You're on your phone. Oh, hello.
Can you hear me okay?
I can just about. You sound as if you're at the end of a tunnel, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to join on the laptop. It doesn't seem to be working.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Are you okay, mate? How are you? Nice to see you.
I'm good. Really tired. I sort of slept. I kind of just woke up about like half an hour ago.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. So I'm just going to do the parish notices. So there's always somebody on the World Storytelling Cafe on a Friday. Do we know who it is next time?
It's
Can
me.
anybody
It's
see?
Friday. It's me. It's me. On
that,
Friday,
Avita?
telling story to kids. That happens to be Avita. Yes.
Brilliant, Avita. So what are you telling exactly? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know yet. Kids stories. I think
Right.
it's kids stories which was asked for, and I probably start with the, hey, Mike is getting served there. Who's that? I want some. Yes, I probably start with very young story and then go up in age a bit. And if anyone,
Right.
you know, comes on and wants to share one too, that'll be great.
And when's that next Friday? I never do those.
That's
I never got around to doing those, I must admit. I'm sure everybody else has. So they're every Friday. Is anybody else doing one? We'll be back here in a fortnight to do ours. We've had tunes and tales and a tune for this month. When's the next podcast coming out, Spina?
There is one coming out every Sunday. So that will be until end of June, I think. We'll be done by the end of June. So there's a
Right.
lot already there. There's some already there and a lot coming up.
Yeah, no, I've just looked. You've got half a dozen already.
Yeah, we've had 24 tellers.
Brilliant.
We've
Do you
been
know how
for,
many?
yeah.
Yeah. Do you know how many people are listening to them? Can you find out?
Yes, I can see not how many people listen to them, how many have been enrolled to the channel. I can see that.
Right. Okay.
Mm.
Right.
Oh, what do you hear in the background? I have to mute myself. It's the heartbeat machine for the baby man. I better mute myself. Sorry.
You've gone all dark on us, Avita. So, Baden, are you telling a story tonight? Because I was just about, it's 7:30, so I was wondering whether to just call it.
I'll have a go at one. I've got one that I've been wanting
Oh.
to tell. I'm not sure it's ready yet.
Well, this is exactly the right place to practice stories. It is. That's one of the reasons we do this and the club. And Julian, our club is on Monday at the Pottery in Much Wenlock. Now, Much Wenlock from you is a couple of hours drive about, but you'd be very welcome to come. It's 7:30 for 8 o'clock. We finish about 10 o'clock.
I don't think I'll get there. I don't think I'll get there this Monday, but I'll certainly put it in the diary going forward. So thank you for that, Mike.
No, you'd be very welcome. It's email me and we'll put you on the mailing list. We've got a MailChimp and all that kind of stuff. That'll be going out this week to remind everybody. But it isn't just stories, it's words at the edge. So it's poetry and creative writing, and hopefully the house band will be there. And we've got a young lad who's 21 wanting to come and do some punk.
Excellent.
Some punk
definitely
poems that he's written himself, apparently. So we're all looking forward to that.
I will definitely try and get there. Thank
Brilliant.
you, Mike.
Okay, absolutely love to see you there. Baden, over to you. You're muted, my friend.
Okay, I'm indebted to a certain someone, a very special someone who's actually on this chat at the moment. They know who they are. And this is a story about a storyteller. Once upon a time, not so very long ago, there was a storyteller who enchanted children. It's a little bit like the Pied Piper of Hamelin. Children found their way to him, and he took them to a place, a small park, where they sat in a circle and listened to the stories that he told. Stories young and old, stories of magical places and wizards and witches, stories of dragons and kings and princes, stories of mermaids, luring and enchanting men to their deaths in the depths of the sea, stories of rainbows in the sky. And the parents of these children began to wonder and worry about who he was, where he came from, what he was doing. And the children came home with stories about the stories that they'd been told, and the parents feared and worried and began to say to their children, no, we don't think you should be going to this small enchanted place and listening to this man. You don't need this. You don't need stories. Come on, you've got screens, you've got iPads and iPods and all sorts of things. And gradually, the children were made to stay away, were told to stay away, and they had to do what their parents said. And one day, after the last child failed to turn up at the appointed place at the appointed time, suddenly people found that their devices, that their screens weren't working anymore. They switched on their computers. Ooh, nothing. They switched on their phones. Ooh, nothing. And gradually there was nothing but darkness. And those parents, those adults, they began to panic because suddenly they were cut off from everything that they knew. There was no connectivity. And with no connectivity, they had no connection to one another. And that made them realize just how cut off they had become from one another. But the children knew what to do. They sneaked out, one by one, out of their homes, and they linked hands with one another. They formed a connection, a human connection, a human chain. And even in the darkness, they knew what to do and where to go. And in the darkness, they found their way back to that magical place where they formed a circle. They sat on the ground, holding hands. Now, the parents had seen some of those children leave, and in their panic, they'd run and banged on one another's doors and wondered what was going on. And they followed those children, burst into the sacred space, saw their children sitting calmly and quietly in a circle, and they rushed in screaming, "What's going on here? What are you doing? What on earth do you think you're doing?" The children said, "Shh. If you sit quietly and wait, he may appear. He who is..." Shh. And then they heard from the distance the sound of a drum. And soon the storyteller appeared. He walked into the middle of the circle, he sat down, and he began telling tales. Tales that enchanted. Tales that took everyone to magical places where dragons flew in the air. Places where princesses were rescued from towers, where kings and sultans were tricked by their lowly aides. Places where mermaids rose from the sea, mingled with humans, enchanted them, and fell in love. And when he finished telling his stories, he got up and he went back through the circle into the night and disappeared. And as those parents and children got up and made their way home, the lights came on. The world was a bright, beautiful place again, and everything returned to normal. As for the storyteller, I hear you ask, what of him? What became of him? Did he too disappear? Of course he didn't. Why do you think I'm here?
That's lovely. Lovely. Well done. Thanks, Maiden. Thank you very much, mate. Right, well, it's 20 to 8, so I'm going to call it for tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here again. I just so look forward to doing this every other Sunday. So I'll be here 2 weeks' time, 6 o'clock UK and Irish time. Thank you for all coming from different parts of the world, wherever you've turned up, including the Cotswolds. Okay.
It's not really the Cotswolds, but don't tell anybody. It brings the property prices down.
Well, I'm not going to be that picky. Warwickshire, you know,
Yeah.
only Baden and I know you are lying completely wrong, but we won't go into it. Great.
you all.
I'll see you
Good
all
night.
in 2 weeks' time if I don't see you before.
Thank you for sharing,
again.
everyone. It's been lovely.
It's been, I really enjoyed it. See you all next time. Bye there. See you, Spina. Bye.
Good night, folks.